Sounds good. So can you hear me clearly?
Yes.
Okay.
Again, yep.
All right. So let's go ahead and start. My name is Jeff Washaleski. I'm the commercial tropical fruit extension agent for University of Florida in Miami-Dade County. I'm going to talk to you today about tropical fruit for Southwest Florida. Now, I said I was an extension agent. We have an extension office in every single county in Florida, as well as some research centers. I'm lucky to work with the Tropical Research Education Center down in South Florida, where I have specialists that work with my field. So I always like to start by saying, where can you find more information? I'm going to give you plenty of information today, but where can you get more? I would say be very careful of what you look up, because just because it's on the internet doesn't mean it's true. Be careful with Facebook and people posting things there. You can get some information that's factual, but sometimes no. YouTube, be careful there too, but you can get a lot of good information there, and obviously it's a visual format, so that helps a lot. I have all my Tropical Fruit Tuesdays on YouTube, so if you go to YouTube and search Tropical Fruit Tuesday, you'll find all of them there. EDIS. EDIS is your number one spot to go for information. So EDIS is the University of Florida database, and you can't get things into EDIS unless it's peer reviewed. So on the right here, you have a document on mango growing in the Florida home landscape. That's an EDIS document. So if you were to search EDIS, E-D-I-S, space UF, space mango, you would find this. And it's about a 12-page document with everything you always wanted to know about mangoes, including how to plant them, diseases, how to fertilize, etc. Another good place to get information is other universities. So if you search and then put space edu, then you're going to find information from other universities, which is usually good as well. A great place to get information is Master Gardeners. I'm sure there's some Master Gardeners listening to this recording. So you're a great source. I love Master Gardeners. I talk to you guys all the time, all throughout the state. And finally, the best place to get information is your own garden. If you see something with your own eyes in your own garden, then you obviously know it's true. Okay, so I'm the commercial tropical fruit extension agent. So my whole job is a lie, because you see Florida is not in the tropics. This is the tropics in pink here, and that means that it never freezes in these areas. But we're up in the subtropics, but that didn't sound good in my title, so I'm a tropical fruit agent. Okay, so I'm going to talk to you about some different tropical fruit and some of their special category or special characteristics. So jackfruit is the biggest tree-borne fruit in the world. Here you see a jackfruit. This is a small one compared to how big they can get. And you see the seeds there. The seeds are edible. The flesh is here. This middle part is called the rag. And what's interesting about jackfruit is they have male and female flowers on the same tree. So here's a male flower. You see it's very smooth. Pollen will come out of here, and that's a male. The female has all these grooves and things like this. So this is a female, and so here's a female on the right getting ready to be pollinated. It's been somewhat pollinated already. And on the left, this is what happens to the males. When the trees are younger, they produce only male flowers. So people might see the little male flowers and think they're small fruit, and then they wither away like this and they think it's a fungus or something like that. It's not a fungus, it's just natural. So as the tree gets bigger and big enough to hold the big fruit, then it will have female fruit, or flowers rather. This looks like a female flower up here, up above, it's bigger. Okay, so mamey. Mamey is another tropical fruit. It's in the Sapitaceae, and it's used in shakes and ice creams. It needs a lot of minor elements. It uses a good amount of water, and it has multiple crops at the same time. So you see this, you have a full-size fruit here. In the background, you see smaller fruit as well. So here's a picture of multiple crops. So you see flowers there, smaller fruit there, and bigger fruit getting ready to be harvested here. So what that means is, I always say that you prune your tropical fruit after the last fruit is picked for the season, but that's never the case with mamey because there's always fruit on there. So it's more difficult to prune it because when you prune, you're obviously going to take off some of the fruit. So that's an issue. And here's minor element deficiency. This is iron deficiency. So if you use some chelated iron and drench your plant, that would help a lot and green up this mamey. Okay, another thing about mamey and sapodilla is they have this sort of brown scruff, so it's very hard to tell when they're ripe. So if you just nick them with your fingernail or a knife, and they're green underneath, or if white latex comes out on the sapodilla, then they're not ready to pick. If they're brown on the sapodilla or red, like here in the mamey on the right side of the screen, that little nick there at the top, that means they're mature and you can harvest them. Okay, citrus. A lot of people like to grow citrus. I get a lot of questions from homeowners on citrus. And basically, citrus, you're gonna get citrus leaf miner, which that's not in the picture here. The left side is citrus, the right side is lychee. And what I'm showing you there is citrus greening on the left side. So you see the mid vein and the mid vein there, and then it's splotchy. It's not the same on each side. It's more yellow on the left here, green on the right. Same with this one down below, this leaf down below. And then if you look at the lychee, it's identical on both sides. So that's minor element deficiency on the right, and this is citrus greening on the left. Citrus greening is fatal. It attacks the roots. So I don't recommend growing citrus at this time. Okay, avocado. Avocado has two things you're going to see a lot of. One is the avocado lace bug, which is happening this time of year. So it has these burned out type of spots on the leaves. And if you flip it over, you see the lace bugs there on the right. The good news about this is about this time of year, the avocados lose all their leaves and they start flowering. So this pest usually gets taken care of. The other thing I have here is laurel wilt. Laurel wilt is a deadly disease that's attacking trees in the Lauriaceae, so swamp bay, red bay, and avocado. So it's a vascular disease that clogs up the vascular system so the tree can no longer get water. And it moves by tiny ambrosia beetles from tree to tree, or it can go through the roots. If the trees are close enough together, the roots are grafted together, the disease can move through the root system. Also, if you move around wood, like wood for campfires or something like that, you can move the beetles inside the wood. So here's a grove that was completely killed by laurel wilt. Anything green you see there is just a weed. So we've lost about 120,000 avocado trees to laurel wilt. Here's some of the signs of the beetles. You have these crystal mounds on the right, or these little straws. Now, you won't always see the straws because after a good rainfall, they get washed away. But you can still see these little tiny holes where the female beetle bores in and then begins to grow her fungus to feed her young. And that fungus triggers something within the tree to try to block the fungus from moving, and it ends up blocking its own vascular system. So if you chip into the wood, you see these holes. And so it's a very deadly disease, and I don't know if you really want to try to grow avocados, if you plant a tree now, when it's smaller, it's not, the beetles don't like to go to it. So you'll have a few years where you're going to be safe. But once the tree gets bigger, might not be that safe. So it's sort of a crapshoot. And I've lost a lot of trees here in my grove at work to laurel wilt, almost all the big ones. I think I have 3 of the larger ones left, but I have replanted. Okay, lychee, this is another one that has a bad problem. It also needs some minor elements, and it needs a certain amount of cold, banked cold hours, sort of like a peach. So if it doesn't get enough cold, it won't flower. Now for us down in South Florida, that's often a problem. For you guys, you probably get more cold, so it's easier to grow lychees. Unfortunately, they do have some issues. They can decline very rapidly if you don't give them minor elements. You see these are iron deficient. They can also be very deficient in potassium. But there is something called the lychee Aranos mite, which I'll write here as LEM. Lychee Aranos mite is a new pest within the last couple years. It attacks lychee. It likes new leaf fleshes. It feeds on all parts of the plant. And if you see this sort of reddish, brownish rust on the leaf, then you definitely have the lychee Aranos mite, and you should contact me or FDAX. The mites themselves, you can't see them. They're too small to see with the naked eye. You also will see these blisters on the leaves. And the mites are so small they can move by air currents or honeybees. So honeybees are one of the main pollinators, so they can move the little mites around. Now, Florida is the leading producer of lychee in the country, and a high percentage of that is in our county down here, Miami-Dade County. Now, lychee Aranos mite in Florida was here in 1955. It was eradicated. It was here in 1993. It was eradicated. Then February 2018, it was found in Lee County on Pine Island. It is now in 13 counties. Unfortunately, one of the places it was found was a nursery in Lee County. So that nursery sent plants throughout the state and also sent the pest. So here's all the areas where commercial lychees are grown. See, you guys here, you don't really have commercial, but you can grow lychees. You see right around you, there's a lot being grown. Now here are spots where the lychee Aranos mite has been found. So it has been found in your county. It's been found in, I have 13 counties or 12. It depends what spot you look at on the FDAX website, but I think it's 13. And here's all the counties. You see it's all these areas here on the outside. And so if you get it, number one, you want to contact me or you want to contact FDAX, and I'll have a slide for that in a minute. But if you get it, you're going to prune the areas of the tree with lychee Aranos mite. You're going to burn or bury those plant debris. You can also chip it, we found. That's something that works. Then you're going to spray sulfur. There's a particular sulfur that is labeled now for lychee, and I can give you the label for that if you contact me. So you're going to spray sulfur at bud break and 15-day intervals. This may take up to 90 days and 8 applications. And the name of the sulfur is microthiol disperis. Sure, I messed that up. Okay, so here's the FDAX helpline, 1-888-397-1517. Here's my number, 305-679-0227. The best way to get in touch with me is my email, sflhort@ufl.edu. So that's South Florida Horticulture, abbreviation sflhort@ufl.edu. So contact me and I'll put you in touch with FDACS, or you can contact FDACS directly. Okay, another tropical fruit that doesn't really have too many problems is carambola. It's a very heavy producer. You're definitely going to get a lot of fruit. You do have some minor element issues with carambola. Also, it'll almost produce itself to death. It has so much fruit. And also it can use a little wind protection. So if you have an area in your yard that has some good wind protection but still gets full sun, that would be a good spot for carambola. Okay, this is the point. If we were doing a live class, we would take a little break. So if you want, you can hit pause and get yourself some coffee or some water and take a little short break. Okay, so I'm going to move forward. Now, we talked about a lot of different tropical fruits, some of the issues that they have, but these are things, questions you would ask if your tree is not fruiting. Because a lot of you have tropical fruit trees, but you're having trouble with fruiting. And if you're not getting fruit on your fruit trees, it's just a shade tree. It's not a tropical fruit tree. So that's an issue. So these are questions I ask when someone calls and says, hey, my trees are not fruiting. Then I go through this list with them. So we're gonna go through this. So the first thing when the tree won't fruit is I ask them, well, where is it planted? Does it get full sun? If it's on the north side of a house, it's getting shaded by the north, or by the sun, or by the house rather. If it's on the north side of a bigger tree, it's getting shaded by that tree. So be careful where you plant things, because the trees need sun to make their food, to get their flowers and have their fruit. They need a lot of energy to produce flowers and fruit. So here's a grove. Remember, I'm the commercial agent, so I go to a lot of groves. Here's a lychee grove, and you see it's got a lot of shade in the interior. The trees are shading each other out. So all this wood in the middle here is not going to produce any fruit. See, there's no weeds down below. It's so shady. So you're only going to get fruit up at the very top, because that's where the sun is. So here's a nice mango grove that's all spaced out. So as long as we keep these trees pruned, you're going to have a good amount of sun on your trees. Now, the other thing is, I say, check the depth of planting. And if it's planted too deep, there's not too much you can do. But you certainly, when you do your plantings, you can make sure that they're at the right level. So what you want to do is take your plant in the container, go down the trunk, and then feel for that first lateral root. Wherever that is, that first flare root, that's the level you want the tree at. So here's a jackfruit that's looking terrible, that was planted just too deep. So that's why it's looking so bad. Another reason it could be looking bad is, you see they use this black muck here, this soil. They thought they were doing the tree a favor, but really you want to use the native soil, which is out here. So a couple of things that are going wrong there. So here's an avocado tree that I pulled out of the ground and laid down on the ground. So we're looking at it from up above. And you see way down here, maybe this root way down here is the first flare root, but it was planted, about 3 inches too deep. See, it was so deep, there's snails on it, there's weeds growing. Also the tape, the tree tape was left on too long, so you see it's binding there. You see up here at the top, it has weed whacker damage, string trimmer damage, yes, right there. And then also you see these dead weeds here, so probably herbicide was sprayed very close to the tree. So lots of things killed this young avocado. One of them, though, that was really bad was it was planted too deep. So here's a mango orchard I went to. Lots of young dead mangoes, all planted too deep. And you see also here, weed whacker damage right there. So here's a guava that I pulled out of the ground, and you can see that here's the flare roots down here. This is the level it should be planted at. And it was, you can see soil all the way up to here, maybe even to here. So this was planted maybe 4 inches too deep, which is crazy. Another thing, I mentioned weed whacker damage. So you want to protect your plants. And one way you can do that is I have this little plastic thing around the tree there. You can make your own with a 2-liter bottle, just cut it up and put it around your tree. Another thing you can do is go out a foot all the way around the tree and just remove all the grass. That will protect your tree from the string trimmer. One thing I like to do when I have it is I use this tree trimmer mulch and put it around sort of like a nest. So in the middle, I pull the mulch back so it's not up on the trunk. And you can see on the right here, you can see a tire track where the mower got close to the tree. So you can imagine if the mulch wasn't there, the mower may have hit the tree. So here's another avocado that was pulled out of the ground. It was dead, and I laid it on the ground. So we're looking at it from up above. You can see the level it was planted at was correct. Here's the flare roots. It was planted at that level, so that's good, but you have all this weed whacker damage right here. So why is that bad? I keep mentioning don't do that to your tree, but why is it bad? Well, most of your trees are going to be dicots, so that means they have this structure on the inside. So on the left, we're looking at a tree that was cut. We're looking at it from above, and in the middle, you have the xylem, and on the outside, you have the phloem, and then the cambium makes more phloem and xylem. The xylem, water and nutrients go up to the leaves. That's actually the portion that gets blocked in lower wilt in the avocado trees, and that's why they can no longer get water, and that's why they wilt. But on the outside, you have the phloem, and things in energy goes down to the roots from the leaves in the phloem. So if you cut that phloem, you're essentially starving your trees, and that's what happens. So you don't want to do that. You want to keep your trees very protected. Okay, so here's a tree that I have mulch around. I have this little plastic, and still it got weed whacked. So, you know, be careful who you hire. Unfortunately, we don't get much choice in who cuts our grass here at the extension office, so I have constant weed whacker issues with my plants, even when I try to protect them. So here's some of my trees, young mangoes. These are much bigger now. They're all flowering really well, but you see the protection and you see the little plastic. So, and you see the spacing. So as these trees get bigger, they'll still get plenty of sunlight. And in the foreground, we have a Fairchild mango. In the back, we have a Cogg's Hall. And on the right, we have a cac. The cac grows very fast, so I'm constantly having to prune it. Another thing to be careful with is stakes and tags. So if you keep a tree staked too long, it can turn out like this, where it doesn't, the wood doesn't really harden up because it's been staked so long. So be careful with that. What I like to do when I get a tree and put it in the ground is immediately loosen loosen the tree from the stake, and then tie it loosely around the stake so it moves a little bit, but it's still being held up. Then be careful with the tags, because here's someone who wanted to tag this tree to show what it was. It was a good idea, but it had a metal tag on it, and it bit into the tree. They never moved it to another spot. They never made it bigger. So this is girdling the tree. So you need to be careful with that. We saw that earlier with the avocado, when even the plastic tree tape can girdle your tree. Another thing to really think about is watering. One thing I get a lot of is people watering too much rather than not enough. I'll say, what's your watering schedule? And they'll say, oh, it's great. I water every day for an hour or every other day for an hour. That's just too much. And trees, especially things like avocados, mangoes, they need, and lychee, they need a dry period so they know it's almost time to flower. So going into the dry season, maybe October, you're going to cut off the irrigation so the trees can recognize what time of year it is and get ready for that either cold front or whatever it is that initiates the bloom. So here is a guava grove that I visited, and they came, as the mother and daughter, came to my office and said the snails were killing all their guavas. So I don't know of snails that can really kill guava trees, so I was very skeptical. I wanted to see what was going on. So I went to the grove, and you see they have the grove planted on this sort of limestone mound. And they have drip irrigation down the middle. You see the black tubing there. So here is a dead guava. I pulled it out of the ground and laid it down. And you see it does have a lot of snails on it. There's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. They're all over 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. So definitely you would say this was killed by snails if you saw it. But these particular snails eat lichen. They're just sort of cleaning the plant. They're not going to girdle it or kill it. So it wasn't the snails, even though they're sort of caught red-handed here with the murder weapon in their hand. Here's what really killed the trees. So here you have a guava, and I pulled the soil back to see if it was planted too deep. Here's a flare root, somewhere around here. So that it's planted at a good level, relatively good level. But you see the dripper is way over here. This is not going to shoot out. It's just going to drip straight down. Remember, it's on a rocky bed. So that water is going straight down. These are new plantings, so their roots are not out here. So it basically is just not getting enough water, and that's what was killing their guavas. So one thing I like to do is just put in a cheap rain gauge. So this is just a 2x4 cut, dug into the ground, a bag of concrete down below, and then a cheap little $3 rain gauge that really will help you to realize how much rain really came down. So it just rained here on Tuesday, and we got almost 2 inches of rain. But I know that because of the rain gauge. Sometimes you'll get a rain and you'll even get little puddles on the ground, but I checked the rain gauge and it's just almost nothing. So that you would know if you have new plantings, you're going to have to water them. We have some new plantings here, but because we got almost 2 inches of rain, I know I didn't need to water them for a couple of days. So this little thing is really good. You just want to have it in an open area so the water can fall straight into it. Okay, I mentioned at the very beginning that a great place to get information is your own garden. So I recommend, you get your coffee, you go out, you walk around in your garden every day if you can, or at least every weekend, and see what's going on. If you find your mango tree, it looks like this, that's sooty mold, and you'll know that underneath you're going to find some scale, but you're probably also going to find some ladybugs that are eating the scale. So if you just leave this alone, it will clear up. You don't have to spray anything. So here is a mango with sooty mold. So I know if I flip this over, I'm going to find scale along the midrib. So we flip it over, and here's all the scale. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. So that's 7, 8, 9. So this scale is causing this sooty mold. The scale feed on the plant, they drip honeydew, the mold grows in the honeydew. But here, this white thing here, which almost looks like a mealybug, is really a juvenile ladybug, and it's eating the scale. So I know if I leave this alone, these two little ladybugs are going to eat all this scale, and that will clear up this sooty mold. Now, if I didn't scout, if I wasn't paying attention to what was going on, I might just see the sooty mold and say, okay, I'm going to spray and spray for the scale, but I would actually kill these ladybugs, which are going to do a better job of the spray to clean up the scale. Another thing to think about is proper nutrition. So you have your fertilizer label. It has 3 numbers: NPK, nitrogen, phosphorus, potassium. The last number, potassium, that's the number that helps the flowering and the fruiting. The first number, nitrogen, that helps the leaves to grow green. So you want a lot of nitrogen for your grass, but you don't want a lot of nitrogen for your fruit trees. So here is a fruit tree that has some issues. One of it is minor element. This is a mango. It has minor element deficiency. So here with this, I would make sure it's not getting too much water. I would make sure it's in the full sun. I would make sure it's not planted too deep. And then I would start in the summertime a foliar spray of micronutrients and an iron drench of chelated iron to get this tree back in shape. So here is a meme that looks like it's having minor element deficiency, but this is actually something called Pythium root rot. So you have to be careful of what you're looking at. This is, the roots are actually sitting in water, which is causing this Pythium root rot, which makes the leaves look like this, which looks very much like microelement deficiency, but it's not. So here's a typical fruit tree ratio, 8:3:9. So this last number, remember, is your potassium. So that's the number you want that's higher. And this will be good for everything except mangoes and lychee. Mangoes and lychee, you're going to want even less nitrogen. They really don't like a lot of nitrogen. So where do you fertilize? So I talked about an iron drench. If you did a drench, so you're going to mix something with water in a bucket, then you're going to pour it out here along this drip line. The drip line is also the spot where you put granular fertilizer. So I would put granular about a foot inside the drip line and a foot out. Just spread it out as you walk around the granular. The granular would be something like this 839. That will come in a bag, be granular. And then, of course, the foliar spray you would put on the leaves, on the top and the bottom of the leaves. The foliar is going to be your micros. The drench is going to be your chelated iron. And then the granular is going to be like your NPK. Now, the reason you put a lot of foliars on the leaves instead of in the ground is because the pH of the ground usually interferes with the uptake of the nutrients, the minor element nutrients. Things like zinc and boron and manganese, iron. Now, another question you would ask yourself about your tree, or let's say you're a master gardener and you're asking these questions, is how was the tree propagated? Was it properly propagated? Meaning, is it from seed or is it grafted or an air layer? Grafting and air layer is an asexual propagation type, meaning it's a clone of the parent. So if you want a Kerry mango and you plant a Kerry mango seed, that seed is a is a mix of the mother plant, the carry, and whatever else pollinated it. So it's not the same as the parent. But if you graft it, if you take a seedling, a young mango, and then take a piece of the carry and put it and weld them together, a technique called grafting, the whole top of the tree is a clone of the carry mango. So that's important to make sure you're properly propagated. But one thing that will cause you trouble, and a lot of people love to grow avocados from seed. If you do, the avocado needs to go through all the stages of sexual maturity. So it's a young avocado, it's older, and then finally it's big enough where it can flower and fruit. So that can take 7, 10, 12 years. If you have it propagated by grafting, the piece you put on the top is already sexually mature. So as soon as that tree is big enough, in 2 to 3 years, it can hold fruit. So if somebody grew their avocado from seed and they said, hey, it hasn't fruited, I've had it 10 years, it's never fruited. You ask them where they got it, and they say, oh, I grew it from seed. Then you know, or if that's you, then you know that that's why it hasn't flowered yet. So here is, this here is a graft. You see the graft union right here. So this top part is a Fairchild mango. The bottom is probably turpentine, which is a rootstock. This is an air layer. It's actually an air layer of a croton, but you would air layer things like lychee, guava, longan. So asexual versus sexual propagation. This is what I was talking about. So on the right, you have seeds. If you grow these, they're going to take much longer to produce fruit. They are not going to be a clone of the parent. On the left, you see all this grafting. These are things that are going to be clones of the parents. And here you have a young mango tree, and it's so small and it's already producing flowers. So that's because it's grafted. So even though it's probably too small to hold fruit, it's already trying to bloom. And you won't see that if you grew it from seed. Okay, and like I said, the seedlings are not the same as the parent. So that's why you want to use asexual propagation. Another thing is, when was the tree pruned? So if you prune a tree right before it's getting ready to flower, that's going to disrupt the flowering cycle. So all the mangoes are blooming now. It's February, they're all blooming. So if I would have pruned my mangoes in December, that would cause them not to flower. So here you see a grove. You see trees on the outside that were not pruned, and they're full of flowers. You see trees in the grove that were pruned, they have very little flowers because they were pruned too late in the season. So like I said before, you want to prune after you pick that last fruit. So these mangoes will give their fruit about June or July. When you pick that last fruit, then you're going to prune. You usually prune once a year to maintain the height and keep the tree open to plenty of sunlight. And that's why on things like the Mamey, it's difficult because they have multiple crops. Another thing that you can do to your tree is give it something I call the shake test, where you go up to the tree, these young trees, and you hold the stem and you just sort of rock them back and forth slowly. If the whole bottom of the tree moves, that means that the roots have not really caught well, and they could be root bound, like this particular mango here that actually died. It was so root bound. And if just the top of the tree moves, then the roots are in good shape. If the whole bottom moves, you have to let that tree get a little bigger and let the roots sort of catch, or you have to ask yourself, is it getting too much water? Because that will be another reason that the roots are not really catching. Okay, so those are all the reasons why your tree might not fruit. We talked about different tropical fruit and some of the issues they have. And we went through all these questions. Is it planted in full sun? Is it planted too deep? Does it have mechanical damage from a weed whacker? Oops, sorry. What's the irrigation schedule? Does it have heavy pest damage? How's the overall health of the leaves? What's the fertilizer schedule? Is it a seedling? How old is it? What's the species? Is it pruned too heavy or too late? And give it the shake test. So these are all things you can do to check if your tree has, why your tree is not fruiting. Okay, so that is my last slide, and I hope you guys enjoyed the talk. I wish I could have been live with you so you could ask questions. You can always send me questions here at sflhort.ufl or at ufl.edu. There's my number, and my name is Jeff Wasilewski. I'm the Commercial Tropical Fruit Crops Extension Agent for UF-IFAS and Miami-Dade County.